from Healing Harvest Homestead, and today we're going to talk about soap making again. This time we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about melt and pour soap. It's totally different than using cold process or hot process because basically the soap is already made for you. It's specially made so that it will melt, and then you can add any additives or oils or things like that to make it what you want it to be. So, you know, you're not losing the creativity of the soap making process, but what you are losing is the ability to make a completely natural soap. But with that said, there are some just beautiful, beautiful artistic things you can do with melt and pour. I've written about melt and pour soap making on my blog, Healing Harvest Homestead, a few different times. And as a matter of fact, if you sign up for my newsletter, I do have a recipe book for melt and pour soap that's there. In my free resource library. But I wanted to show you this book that Jan Berry sent me. She's one of my soap making heroes. In fact, she is where I learned how to make soap for the first time. I learned cold process from her, and then I branched off into hot process because I am impatient, and with cold process you have to wait 4 to 6 weeks and sometimes longer for your soap to cure, whereas with hot process you can use it pretty much right away. A cure time is helpful, but we'll go into that. I'll do another video on the differences between hot process and cold process soap making sometime. But for now we're going to talk about melt and pour, and I've got her book, Easy Homemade Melt and Pour Soaps. So if you are new to soap making and you're nervous about using lye, I suggest starting off with melt and pour. And that way you're going to see if you like it and what you can do with it. Now typically, making melt and pour soap is a matter of melting the soap down and then adding any colorants or essential oils you want, or fragrance oils if you want to do chemicals. And then pouring them into a soap mold of your choice. And that's pretty much it, seriously. So with that said, we're gonna do a real simple recipe here that's in Jan's book. I'm gonna show it to you. I'm really thrilled to see how this turns out. But she's got some amazing recipes in this book for melt and pour. I was looking through here and really, you know, she's an artist, okay? So, I suggest if you want to get into melt and pour soap making and you'd like to have a little bit more than the basics and really get into some artistic soaps, this is a good book to start off with. I'll leave a link to this book below too if you want to check it out on Amazon. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and make this soap. So what I've got here are my ingredients laid out. It does call for a tablespoon of rose petals, dried and powdered, and I'm going to go ahead and leave those out. What I am going to add is the madder root powder. Madder root powder is a natural plant root that creates kind of a pink or purple color in your soap. It's real pretty. And then I'm using goat's milk melt and pour base, okay? You can buy your bases in pound blocks. So this is about 16 ounces of soap. And this came in a 2-block bunch. And this is by Our Earth Secrets. It's one of my favorite brands because honestly, with melt and pour soap base, depending on the brand you're using, you're going to end up with some chemicals in there. And if you're trying to be chemical free or make homemade natural soap, you really need to be careful with your melt and pour base. But this brand, Our Earth Secrets, is really not bad. I checked them out, and so I only do natural soaps. I don't like to use chemicals or toxins in our home, and I actually don't feel too bad about this soap. There's some things in there that maybe be a little bit questionable, but there's no sodium lauryl sulfate or detergents or things like that. So this is a good brand. I'll leave a link to this below too. And this is goat's milk soap base. The other nice thing about melt and pour soap making is that you can buy different kinds of bases, which is really nice. So like if you want to make a honey soap or a translucent soap, or if you want to make a shea butter soap, or there's just all kinds of choices. There's even aloe vera soaps. So you can buy these bases in all different kinds of types of soaps. All right, so you're going to need about a 1/4 teaspoon of madder root powder. You're going to need 10.5, I believe it is, ounces of either shea butter or goat's milk. So you want it to be white. You want an opaque white soap base for this so the color stands out. And then you'll want a kitchen scale to weigh it, okay? Which I already did. So I'm going to set these aside. And then she calls for a 1/2 teaspoon of rosehip seed oil. I actually already used the rest of my rosehip seed oil when I made my anti-aging serum last week, and that's actually in a YouTube video too. So I'll link to that if you want to see it. It's a really nice anti-aging facial serum. But I'm going to go ahead and substitute with some apricot kernel oil and some argan oil. And then the other thing you're going to need is about a 1/2 teaspoon of sunflower oil, which I also don't have. So we're substituting with argan and apricot kernel. And then essential oils. So she suggests geranium and lavender, which is a really nice combination. It's a floral combination. It's not going to smell like roses exactly, but it'll be really, really pretty. But instead, I wanted to show you this because I just got these the other day. These are from Plant Therapy. They sent me this winter set. It's in this cute little box. Let me see if I can open this up here. There we go. It's got a little magnetic holder, and it comes with 3 full-size 15, these are 15 milliliter, yep, 10 milliliter, sorry, they're 1/3 of an ounce as packages of essential oils that are scented for winter. And I love these. I've been using them constantly, but one of these is what I'm going to scent this soap with. So you've got Christmas tree, you've got holly berries, and you've got 3 gifts. I love them all, but the one I'm going to use for this soap is not Christmas tree since I'm making rose soap. But I thought I would use the holly berries because it's just really pretty. It's got a little bit of a fir tree overtone, and then 3 gifts is really nice too. I think I'm going to use the 3 gifts. It's got a little bit more of a floral scent. So that's what I'm using. And she suggests about a 1/16 of a teaspoon of total essential oils, which is the same as 2/16 is going to be 1/4 of a teaspoon. So we're just going to go with 1/4 of a teaspoon in our soaps. And actually, Jan scents her soaps really, really lightly, which is good if you're a beginner, because then you can kind of play around and see if you want to increase the scents. So I'm actually probably going to increase the amount of essential oils in this soap to about 1/8 of a teaspoon, okay? So the first thing you want to do is you want to go ahead and you want to cut your melt and pour soap into cubes. Okay. And I'm just going to cut them into like 1/2 inch slices. I'm not real super exact or careful. You don't need to be, because what you're going to do is you're going to put these cubes in a double boiler, which I will show you, and you're going to melt them down, and they melt quite fast. Okay, so, and there are, sometimes you can infuse your herbs into your soap, and actually I'm going to go ahead and put the madder root powder in with these cubes. So I'm going to go ahead and get these dropped into my pan. Turn it on low. You want it on low because you don't want this to actually boil or even simmer, and it'll melt on a really low temperature, okay? So get these put in there. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and measure out my madder root powder. Get that in there. So you don't need very much to make a really light pink soap. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. Okay, 1/4 teaspoon. And again, this recipe is in her Melt and Pour soap book. And then a 1/2 teaspoonful of your additional oils. Total, that's 1/4 teaspoon each. Now, this is a facial soap, and that's because it's got the, luxury oils in it. With a body soap, you could choose to leave out these oils if you wanted to. All right, this aside. Okay, and now we're just going to wait for the soap to melt. Okay, so here is the melt and pour cubes with a little bit of the madder root powder. It's kind of hard to see in this light, but it's actually a lot more pink. And these little globs here, they'll go ahead and melt into the liquid. But it's going to be really pretty, really pretty. The thing with madder root powder is you do not need very much. Like you just saw here, we used about 1/4 of a teaspoon for 10 ounces approximately of melt and pour soap. If you put much more than that in, you're going to have a really deep dark red soap. So just something to consider. Anyhow, it is now melting down. It's almost ready for me to pour into the soap molds after I get the essential oils in, that is. All right, so at this point, what you could do if you wanted to, there's little specks of madder root powder still in here. You could, if you don't like the specks, go ahead and strain it through a fine mesh sieve, maybe cheesecloth, a few layers of it, if you want to, or you can just go ahead and enjoy the natural look of the madder root powder, which is what I'm going to do. I really like the look of herbal speckles in my soap. So, and again, I didn't use infused rose petals in this, so I'm not worried about, roses will turn brown in your soap over time, so I'm not even worried about that because all I used here was the madder root powder. So now I'm going to add my essential oils. I'm going to stir it up really well, and then I'm going to pour it into my soap mold. I got this soap mold on Amazon. I've never used it before, so this is going to be an experiment. All right, sorry for the tipped camera. I'm trying to do like a million things at the same time, and also excuse all the stuff over here. I'm making medicines and salves and soaps and everything to get ready to send off for Christmas, so I'm a little crazy, but I wanted to get this done. So now I'm going to pour my melted soap into the soap molds. I'm only going to go about halfway up. These are actually really large cavities. Ooh, got a little much in there. So this is going to yield about 4 bars for what I'm pouring in here. If I had poured the soap all the way up to the top of the cavity, then I probably would have gotten about 3 bars out of this. Now I've got some isopropyl alcohol in a spray bottle. I'm going to go ahead and spray the tops of the soap very lightly, because what that does, you'll see bubbles emerging on your soap. You don't want those bubbles because they'll show up in the finished product. And that just isn't very pretty, right? So spritzing a little bit of alcohol right on the top will help those bubbles dissipate and go away. So now I'm just going to let this sit. This is kind of a flimsy soap mold, so I'm kind of afraid to move it. I don't want to get a skin forming on my soap, which can happen if you start moving your melt and pour soaps around. So I'm just going to let it sit right here, and in about an hour or so, I should be able to move it. I just have to tell you this because I meant to talk more about this and I forgot. But Mr. V is standing right here watching me do this soap, and he's like, this looks like it's something you could do with kids. And it is. I've actually made melt and pour soap with my students in a classroom before. It's a lot of fun. I've made melt and pour soap with my granddaughter when she was about 10. It's a lot of fun. They're old enough at that age to, if with close monitoring, to stir the soap, watch it melt, get their additives in, make decisions about the kinds of additives. So it's kind of a nice project to do with kids, and especially if you're giving the soaps away as gifts and things. So just wanted to point that out too. Again, the plant therapy essential oils that I'm using is the winter holiday set. Loving it. And then the book I'm using for this recipe is Jan Berry's Melt and Pour Soaps. Okay, a modern guide to melt and pour soap making, which I'm really enjoying. I'm pleasantly surprised. I have her other soap making book. She's got one called Natural Soap Making, where she goes into depth about cold processed soaps and recipes, and I love the way she uses natural ingredients, which is right in line with what I do too. So anyway, and if you are interested in hot processed soap, that's my focus. I love making hot processed soap, and as a matter of fact, I just cut these rose hip bars of soap. They're actually a really dark, pretty purple color from the rose hips that I used. But if you're interested in natural hot processed soap making, I do have a course. I'll link to that below too. It's well worth taking. It's not expensive, and you get my ebook as a bonus. And so there's tons of recipes. You'll learn how to make and use textures with your hot processed soaps. And you know, if you prefer hot process, I suggest you get the course. and I'm always here to ask questions of too. Okay, so it's now time to remove the soaps from the silicone mold, and I just popped these two out very easily, and I'm ready to pop this one out. I love silicone molds because the soap just kind of peels right off of the mold and comes out beautifully. I have to admit, I did move the mold, and I did have a little boo-boo here, but that's okay. Because I fixed it just by making things smooth and neat again. But basically, look at this. It's a beautiful, lovely, light pink, floral, goat milk facial soap. Melt and pour, super easy. Didn't take very long. Smells amazing. And I hope you try this. All right. Please subscribe. If you have questions, leave them below. Don't forget, if you want to sign up for the newsletter, you can unsubscribe at any time, but you will get access to my resource library, where you'll find all kinds of free printables and downloadables for your homesteading and self-reliance pleasure. Alrighty.